they do, ultimately it really all comes down to the fact that these museums have these records of things from particular locations. So I could take, I have every animal that we have in a jar here is tied to a particular time and space, so we know where they're from and so on. So we basically maintain that information and use that to do things like describe new species. We refine what we know about the geographic ranges of species and so on. So that's a big part of what we do. We also do a bit with a lot of student training. So we train students in how to actually go about understanding biodiversity. So how do we know about the kinds of snakes that live here in Michigan or that live in Central Australia and so on. So we train people in that kind of biodiversity science so they can actually identify things and study them. And the third thing we do is we basically study a lot of fundamental patterns in biodiversity to try to understand how life evolved the way that it did. So we try to understand why things look the way they do. So I'll give you a couple of examples from some of the kinds of things that I do. So I'm really interested in why there are so many species of lizards and snakes on the planet. So there's about 10,000 species of lizards and snakes on Earth. There's a huge diversity of body form. Lizards and snakes are very closely related. So you have things that, for instance, look like this. You have things that look like this. This is a kind of gecko right here. Snakes and geckos. So you're familiar with lizards and snakes, I'm sure. But one of the things that we do is try to figure out why there is so much variation in the form of different kinds of animals. So I do a lot of work personally on lizards and snakes from Australia. Australia is really cool. Amazingly, it's sort of the epicenter of reptile diversity on Earth. There's about 1,000 species of lizards and snakes in Australia alone. So there's a lot of really cool things that happen there. So how many of you are familiar with a Komodo dragon? So Komodo dragons are huge, right? So you go to a zoo, we have Komodo dragons in zoos because they're giant lizards. They can weigh quite a bit, certainly up to and exceeding 100 pounds. But in Australia, we actually have the same group of lizards that basically gave rise to Komodo dragons basically evolved into a set of really small Komodo dragon things. These are basically these are two different species right here, but these are entirely different forms of the same kind of lizard as a Komodo dragon. So this is their average adult size right here. So one of the kinds of questions that we're interested in is things like how do you get that much variation in body size? Why does this group of lizards evolve into things as big as a Komodo dragon, which can kill a pig, down to these little things right here, which basically eat small lizards. And these things can't hurt you; they're pretty small. There's actually about 25 to 35 species of these things in Australia. So they're the whole bunch. If you think of like a Komodo dragon as being the classic kind of what we call the monitor lizards. There's actually a lot of them in Australia. So we have a number of other things out. I'll actually uncover some of these and take some questions at the end, but we have a couple of PhD students who are working here in herpetology doing various types of research on things. And Iris Holmes and Pascal Title, I thought, would talk a little bit about some of the things that they're doing as well.